Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. I hope you're doing okay. So today we're going to embark on a comprehensive exploration of Plutarch, a profound figure in ancient philosophy and history whose works have had a lasting impact on Western thought and culture. Throughout this exploration, we're going to delve into his life, his philosophical outlook, his major works, and his enduring legacy. So really we're going to do a really sort of brief biography of Plutarch, but not just the man, his ideas, his philosophy, and the impact as it carried forward as well. Now there's a lot that could be said about Plutarch. He was a prolific writer. So we could be here forever doing a video that is almost endless. Talking about Plutarch, and while I think that would be an interesting thing to do, it's a lot to take on board at once. So really the aim of this video is to give you an overview of the man, his philosophy, the world in which he inhabits, and the impact on the world that he and his ideas have had. And while this will be quite comprehensive, the video will only serve as a starting point for those who wish to delve deeper into the life of Plutarch. So we're going to start with by looking at Plutarch's life. Plutarch was born around 46 AD or CE, Common Era. In Chaeronea, which is a small town in Greece. And he came from a family that was quite well off, which afforded him the luxury of a thorough education. And throughout his education, he studied philosophy, rhetoric, and also mathematics in Athens under the philosopher Ammonius. So this broad and deep education laid the foundations for his later works. And the works that he produced are steeped in philosophical inquiry and also like moral contemplation. So Plutarch's early education in Athens was a crucial foundational building block of the man who would later become immortalized through his teachings and his works. He studied under Ammonius, who was himself a Platonic philosopher, and that deeply influenced Plutarch's own philosophical development. So Ammonius's teachings emphasized ethical living and the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, which became the sort of central pillars of Plutarch's philosophy and really the central themes of most of his works. There is a quote from Moralia in which Plutarch reflects on his education, and that quote is, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. Now that is, in my opinion at least, a beautiful quote for all of Plutarch's achievements and so on. The thing that I think he doesn't get enough credit for is his skill as a writer. Anyway, this quote, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled," it serves to highlight Plutarch's belief in the transformative power of education. Rather than merely acquiring information, Plutarch felt that education should ignite intellectual and moral development. a principle that guided his own writings and teachings in his later life. And this quote also signifies his belief in the active, dynamic nature of intellectual and civil engagement. After Plutarch completed his education, he travelled extensively throughout the Mediterranean, including trips to Rome and Alexandria. These travels, These travels afforded him the opportunity to engage with numerous scholars and prominent figures, which enriched his understanding of various cultures and histories. In Rome, he interacted with influential figures, which broadened his perspective and enhanced his work's cross-cultural appeal. Plutarch also served as a priest at the temple of Apollo in Delphi, a role that underscored his commitment to religious and ethical practices. He also held various civic positions within Chaeronea, involving himself in local politics and education, which demonstrated his dedication to his community. Plutarch spent the later years of his life in Chaeronea, continuing to write and engage with his community until he died around, when was it? 119 AD. That was it. 119 AD. Plutarch's life was one of intellectual pursuit, moral reflection, public service, and it was deeply entwined with the philosophical and cultural currents of his time. His life was marked by a dedication to teaching, to learning, and to serving his community. His travels and interactions with various cultures enriched his perspectives, while his roles in public service reflected his commitment to ethical living and civic responsibility. So that is a really short sort of bit of background about Plutarch. There is obviously, he was a man that lived a very full life, so there is a great deal more that could be said, but those are the sort of points that I feel are most relevant to the man we've come to understand as Plutarch. So at this point, I think we should move on and start looking at some of his major works. So Plutarch's literary contributions are, and I don't use this word lightly, they are immense. His two most famous works, Parallel Lives and Moralia, are profoundly influential and have been subject of scholarly debate since their inception, and have also influenced many philosophers and intellectuals and so on that have come since. Parallel Lives consists of a series of biographies of famous Greek and Roman men, and Plutarch presented these men in pairs in order to draw moral conclusions and comparisons between them. So the intention was to provide moral lessons through the examination of these figures' virtues and vices. Some of the pairs included Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. And they were put together like that, as I said, to contrast and properly examine the virtues and the vices of each figure. The following quote is from Parallel Lives. The soul, like the body, lives by what it feeds on. So this metaphor underscores his belief in the importance of moral and intellectual nourishment. It, in a sense, it emphasizes the idea that the body requires, that just as the body requires, like sustenance in order to thrive, the soul requires ethical and intellectual development. Plutarch believed that studying the lives of great men could provide this nourishment. In some senses, it was the biographies, the actions rather than the words of these men really served as a demonstration of these virtues in action. And Plutarch felt that you could learn more from a man's actions than you can from any sort of little saying that they might have. The structure of parallel lives serves a dual purpose. On the one hand, it provides some historical information. I will say it's important to note that the way that we view a historical account and would structure a historical account is very different now to how it would have been back then. But yeah, nonetheless, it provides historical information, but it also, and perhaps more importantly, offers ethical instruction. By pairing the Greek and Roman figures, Plutarch draws some moral parallels and contrasts that highlight the sort of the universal virtues and vices that are shared by both Greek and Roman culture. And part of the reason he did this was in an effort to, you have to bear in mind that the Romans inherited the Hellenistic world left behind by the Alexander the Great and the Greeks. So the value of Plutarch's work really was one of the things that was valuable was this bridging of the two worlds, the old Hellenistic world and the new sort of Roman world, and that gave people within the Roman Empire and a means by which they can relate the old stories with the new and connect with them in a way that is relatable to them, so they can get the meaning out of it, and they can take examples from it, and then they can begin to live a life of virtue. I'm going to have another look at another quote. It is part of a good man to do great and noble deeds, though he risks everything. So this quote was intended to reflect Plutarch's admiration for those who put the effort into pursuing virtue and greatness and all of those things, and doing so even when it comes at great personal risk. In some senses, it sort of illustrates Plutarch's belief that such things were, that such virtues were noble in nature, and also the other side of that is that it highlights the acts of courage and integrity. So bear in mind that this quote, which comes from Parallel Lives as well, it is from a sort of a biography. So this biographical sort of direction by which to view virtue and greatness meant that the people, the consumers of this information, were then able to relate in such a way that they could visualize their own life with them embodying those virtues. So let's have a look at Moralia, another of Plutarch's great works. So Moralia is essentially it's a collection of essays and dialogues, and it's across a wide range of topics. Topics like ethics, religion, politics, and literature. The Moralia showcases Plutarch's philosophical interests and his ability to engage with complex issues in a thoughtful and accessible manner. In Moralia, Plutarch writes, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." And I know we've already gone over this quote, but it's a heavy quote, right? It is something that is I think has many layers to it. That is it can be sort of interpreted in a diverse range of ways. So in this instance, the sort of interpretation is that the quote emphasizes that education and intellectual growth should inspire and ignite curiosity and wisdom, rather than just imparting static knowledge. So the essays in Moralia cover as I just said, a diverse range of themes, and those themes range from the nature of virtue to things like the significance of religious practices. Plutarch's discussions often blended physical inquiry with practical wisdom, which made his works both relevant and relatable across different contexts and indeed eras. Plutarch asserts that it is our duty to improve and not neglect the mind. Now, this quote reflects Plutarch's belief in the continuous pursuit of intellectual and moral improvement, and that such things are a virtue and are to be celebrated and replicated across all peoples. So now that we've looked at that, I think beyond those quotes, I think I'd like to make a recommendation. My recommendation is that you go and read Plutarch's works, the Parallel Lives and the Moralia, because they provide rich insights into Plutarch's philosophical and ethical views. Through the detailed biographies and thoughtful essays, he offers valuable lessons on virtue, leadership, and the human condition that, with some interpretation, still are every bit as relevant today as they were when they were produced. And beyond just getting those philosophical insights and sort of ethical views, the literary prowess of Plutarch should be, in my opinion, looked upon with reverence, because he was an incredible writer. And just the style of writing alone will have, in my opinion at least, an impact, and it will move you in thought and feeling. So now that we've had a really quite brief look at some of the more famous works of Plutarch, I think that at this point we should delve into the philosophy of Plutarch, because this is the bit that is most often discussed, most often misunderstood. But also this is the part where Plutarch's genius really comes to the surface when you delve into his philosophy, and then you apply your own interpretation, your own thoughts and your own feelings to it. It is an insight into the mind of a true genius. Plutarch's philosophy is, to say the least, it is a multifaceted enterprise which encompasses a range of ethical, religious and metaphysical themes. Plutarch's ethical philosophy centers around the concept of virtue, which is not uncommon in the philosophical world, and Plutarch drew upon Plato and Aristotle by emphasizing that virtues are intrinsic qualities of character that enable individuals to act rightly and live harmoniously. He argues that the virtue is the basis of true happiness and can be cultivated through education, self-discipline, and philosophical contemplation. So I'm going to give you a quote from Plutarch. It is, it's an incredibly short quote. It could be a tweet, but it's a heavy hitter, to say the least. Are you ready? Character is simply a habit long continued. So let's try that again. Character is simply habit long continued. What a quote. So this reflects Plutarch's belief of in the sort of the value and importance of habitual actions when it comes to shaping your character. In his work Parallel Lives, Plutarch presents historical figures as moral exemplars, illustrating how their values and their vices shaped their destinies. By comparing the lives of the Greek and Roman figures, he aims to provide readers with practical examples of virtuous behaviour and also the consequences of moral failings. Plutarch writes, "The virtues of great men are examples to others." So this is really, as it says on the tin, this is this quote highlights the belief that Plutarch held in the educational value of studying the lives of virtuous individuals. By examining the ethics, by examining the actions and choices of great men, readers can learn important moral lessons, and perhaps more importantly than that, they get to see the true ethics of the man. Not the ethics the man states, but the ethics the man lives by. Plutarch advocated for moderation and balance. He was heavily influenced by the Stoic philosophers, and he promoted a moderate approach to life. Everything in moderation. Something that the modern world recognizes and yet somehow ignores quite frequently, I would say. He criticized the extremes of behavior and emotion, suggesting that a balanced course leads to stability and well-being. And this idea of Plutarch's aligns with the Aristotelian concept of the golden mean. Plutarch asserts, "The measure of a man is the use he makes of his time." So this reflects his emphasis on the judicious use of your time and resources. Essentially, like emphasizing the sort of the importance of balance and moderation in the use of time and resources. Plutarch believed that a well-balanced life, where time and efforts are wisely allocated, leads to true fulfillment. In fact, he puts it forward as the idea of the only sort of route towards any meaningful fulfillment. Plutarch's metaphysical views are heavily influenced by Plato. He upholds the existence of an intelligible realm of forms or ideas, which are like perfect and immutable archetypes of the material world. He believed that the material world is just a reflection of these higher realities, and that true knowledge involves apprehending these eternal forms through philosophical reasoning. In discussing the soul, Plutarch writes, "The soul, like the body, lives by what it feeds on." And this is a quote we've already looked at, but it's a really important one to go back over, I feel, because it underscores his belief in the nourishment of the soul through virtue and wisdom. And it is essentially analogous to the way that the body requires sustenance. Plutarch also maintained, let me try that again. Plutarch maintained a what could be considered like a dualistic view of soul and body. He suggests that the soul is immortal and divine, and only sort of resides in the body as like a temporary stop, and the soul's true home, so to speak, is the realm of the forms, and its ultimate goal is to return to that sort of higher state of existence. He also discusses the transmigration of the souls, suggesting that the soul undergoes a cycle of like reincarnation until it achieves a state of like purification. The soul is the mirror of the invisible world. So this quote emphasized Plutarch's view of the soul as a reflection of the higher intelligible realm. The soul's ultimate purpose is to transcend the material world and return to its divine state. In his cosmological views, Plutarch adheres to the Platonic framework. He believed that the universe is it's an ordered and purposeful creation governed by a divine intelligence or a creator of some kind. This divine principle ensures harmony and rationality across the cosmos, reflecting the the inherent order of the intelligible realm. The universe is a harmonious whole, reflecting the divine mind. This quote highlights Plutarch's view of the universe as a reflection of the divine mind's rational and harmonious order. He believed that understanding this cosmic order was essential to living a virtuous life. Plutarch places a strong what's the word I'm looking for? Significance? No, emphasis. A strong emphasis. Plutarch places a strong emphasis on piety and religious observance. He argued that reverence for the gods and adherence to ritual, specifically religious ritual, are essential aspects of leading a life of virtue. His works on religious customs and beliefs explore the symbolic and also the moral significance of religious practices. And Plutarch comes from a time of where people were far more devoutly religious than any person alive today could possibly imagine. So that's why religion plays such a heavy and meaningful role in Plutarch's philosophy and his life in general. On Isis and Osiris, Plutarch writes, "To know the gods is to know oneself." And this quote underscores the connection between religious understanding and knowledge of self. So Plutarch believed that understanding the divine helps individuals to understand their own nature. Religious practices and also religious knowledge contribute to the personal and moral development of an individual. Plutarch exhibits a mystical dimension in his religious thought. He believes that through contemplation and moral purification, individuals can attain a direct and intimate experience of the divine. This sort of mystical union with the divine represents the highest form of knowledge and the ultimate goal of human existence, at least according to Plutarch. Through contemplation, the soul rises to the divine. So this quote, really short and snappy, reflects Plutarch's belief in the transformative power of contemplative practices. So Plutarch felt that contemplation and moral purification can elevate the soul to a direct experience of the divine. Such experiences are seen as the highest form of knowledge, and this old idea about the soul is one that will be extremely familiar to those who are of the Abrahamic belief sets, because the Abrahamic beliefs share a similar role. In fact, Plutarch was in some capacity was quite influenced by scholars of Judaism and indeed of Christianity. So those views really do shine through quite frequently in his works. Plutarch valued education and rhetoric as essential tools for cultivating virtue and wisdom. He stresses the importance of educating the young in philosophy, literature, and the arts, believing that a well-rounded education fosters moral and intellectual development. As Plutarch himself said, "Education is the best provision for old age." So this essentially it reflects Plutarch's belief in the sort of the lifelong benefits of a strong educational foundation, because Plutarch viewed education as being a lifelong asset that provides wisdom and moral strength throughout your life. He believed that a solid education was essential for personal and indeed for civic virtue. In his more sort of political philosophy, Plutarch advocates for the active participation of virtuous individuals in public life. He believed that ethical leadership is crucial for the well-being of the state, and that the rulers of the state should embody the values of justice, wisdom, and moderation, something that modern politicians could benefit from taking on board. His writing often addressed the moral responsibilities of political leaders and also the impact of their character on governance. Plutarch states, and we're going over this same quote again because it is super relevant, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it's necessary. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. So this, as we've said before, highlights Plutarch's belief that education should inspire and ignite curiosity, wisdom, and should be active rather than merely just sort of imparting static knowledge, and that the transformative view of education that also heavily informed Plutarch's political and ethical teachings. So Plutarch also underscored the importance of community and friendship in achieving a good life. He views friendship as a vital source of moral support and mutual improvement, encouraging individuals to cultivate relationships based on virtue and mutual respect. Plutarch writes, "The very spring and root of honesty and virtue lie in good education." The very spring and root of honesty and virtue lie in good education. So this quote emphasizes the importance of education in fostering honesty and virtue. Plutarch believed that cultivating good character and ethical behavior begins with a solid educational foundation. Plutarch's philosophy, as we've seen, encompasses a rich tapestry of ethical, religious, and metaphysical ideas. His emphasis on virtue, moral exemplars, and the harmonious integration of various philosophical and religious insights reflect his commitment to a holistic and indeed elevated conception of the good life. To understand Plutarch's philosophy fully, it is essential to recognize the influences that shaped his thinking. Plutarch drew inspiration from several key figures and schools of thought in ancient Greek philosophy. Plato's work form the cornerstone, if you will, the foundation of Plutarch's philosophical framework. He fully embraced Plato's theory of forms, positing the existence of eternal, immutable archetypes. Plato's emphasis on virtue and the idea that knowledge of the good leads to right action profoundly shaped Plutarch's ethical views. Plutarch writes, "The body, like the soul, lives by what it feeds on." This metaphor that I've already shared with you several times, but my God, it's beautiful. This metaphor underscores his belief in the nourishment of the soul through virtue and wisdom. And it reflects the idea that the soul requires this ethical and philosophical enrichment in order to thrive. Plutarch adopted this view, emphasizing the importance of the sort of moral and intellectual nourishment. Aristotle's ethical writings, especially the concept of the golden mean, quite heavily influenced Plutarch. Aristotle's idea of practical wisdom as being sort of essential for virtuous action is evident in Plutarch's emphasis on the application of ethical principles in everyday life. We're going to go over another quote that I've already shared with you, but it's important. Plutarch asserts, "Character is simply habit long continued." So this reflects his belief in the importance of habitual actions in shaping your character. And it shows Aristotle's influence on Plutarch's thinking about character development. By consistently practicing virtuous habits, individuals can cultivate a strong moral character. Although Plutarch quite publicly and famously critiqued some aspects of Stoicism, Plutarch appreciated its focus on inner moral strength and also the development of personal character. The Stoic idea of living in accordance with nature and recognizing a rational order in the universe influenced his cosmology and his ethics. Plutarch writes, "It is part of a good man to do good and noble deeds, though he risk everything." So this quote reflects his real admiration for those who are out in the world and actually pursuing virtue and greatness, especially when it comes at a risk to themselves. Plutarch really wanted to emphasize virtue and ethical behavior, even in the face of like challenges and obstacles, regardless of how significant those challenges are. Plutarch valued this aspect of Stoicism and actually incorporated into his own teachings. Pythagorean mysticism, with its emphasis on the immortality of the soul and numerical harmony, influenced Plutarch's thought. He was intrigued by the Pythagorean view on the soul's transmigration and the idea of a harmonious universe. "The soul is the mirror of the invisible world," writes Plutarch. So this quote reflects his belief in the soul's connection to the divine realm. It emphasizes the influence, the Pythagorean influence on Plutarch's view of the soul as a reflection of the higher intelligible realm. He believed that understanding this connection was essential for the spiritual and moral development of both the individual and as the collective as a society. The Socratic method of inquiry, involving probing questions to stimulate critical thinking, heavily influenced the dialogical and dialectical style of Plutarch. Socrates' emphasis on the examined life and the belief that virtue is knowledge as recurring themes within the writings of Plutarch. Plutarch writes, "To know the gods is to know oneself." This quote underscores the connection between religious understanding and self-knowledge that Plutarch believed existed. So this quote also kind of reflects the Socratic influence on Plutarch's beliefs in the importance of self-knowledge and ethical inquiry. Understanding yourself is seen as a key and quite central component of virtuous living. Middle Platonism, a phase of Platonic philosophy that sought to synthesize Plato's ideas with other traditions, heavily influenced Plutarch. This included the discussions on intermediary beings connecting the material world and the sort of divine realm. Plutarch states, "Truth is one, though the sages speak of it in many ways." This reflects his, I guess by sort of modern standards, quite inclusive approach to religious and philosophical traditions. This quote emphasized the belief Plutarch held in the universality of truth, regardless of the sort of cultural or religious context. He valued the underlying moral and also philosophical insights shared across many different traditions. Plutarch's role as a priest at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi and the guidance of the Delphic oracle influenced his thought. The Delphic maxims, such as "know thyself" and "nothing in excess," are reflected in his ethical teachings. Plutarch asserts, the measure of a man is the use he makes of his time." So this quote highlights Plutarch's view on the importance of balance and like moderation in the use of time and resources. He believed that a well-balanced life where time and efforts are wisely allocated leads to true fulfillment. Plutarch's philosophy was shaped by a rich tapestry of influences, including the works of Plato, Aristotle, Stoicism, Pythagoreanism. Oh, that was a tongue twister. And the Socratic method, as well as the religious and ethical traditions of his time. These diverse sources contributed to his unique, and I really do mean unique, blend of metaphysical, ethical, and religious thought. So now let's, now that we have had a look at the philosophy of Plutarch, it's important, I think, then to move on, because we could talk like we said about the history of Plutarch. We could talk for hours on end, days, weeks, months on end about the philosophy of Plutarch. And as interesting as that would be, I don't have months of my life to devote to one singular video. And, perhaps more importantly, I very much doubt anyone wants to listen to me talking without stopping for a month or whatever. And also, it would just be extremely silly to make a video that long. So we're going to leave the philosophy there for now, at least in such a direct way. And we are going to have a look at the legacy. So when I say the legacy, this is really about the impact of the philosophy and the teachings of Plutarch on both the time that he came from and indeed today in the modern world, because that's the bit that is that exemplifies the value that exists within the philosophy of Plutarch, because that shows how the philosophy has been adapted and incorporated into culture, and it shows that the ideas of Plutarch are every bit as relevant now as they were on the day that they were written. So let's dive into it and discuss the shall we say enduring legacy of Plutarch's philosophy and its impact on both ancient Rome and the modern world. Plutarch's works, especially Parallel Lives, were highly influential in Rome. His biographies provided Roman readers with examples of virtuous conduct and moral lessons. Roman statesmen and thinkers such as Marcus Aurelius and Cicero were influenced by Plutarch's emphasis on virtue and ethical behaviour. His writings served as a guide for his personal conduct and public service, reinforcing the importance of moral integrity in leadership. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, if you will, the Stoic emperor of the Roman Empire, and one of the most famous Stoic philosophers of all time, once wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." So this reflects the Stoic influence and Plutarch's emphasis on immediate virtuous action. This quote from Marcus Aurelius echoes the themes of ethical behaviour and the importance of virtuous living in the present, concepts that Plutarch championed in his works. So Marcus Aurelius was heavily influenced by Plutarch. So Marcus Aurelius had a friend called Sextus, and in the Meditations, Marcus Aurelius names Sextus as the person who taught Marcus how to live in accordance with nature. And Sextus was the grandson and pupil of Plutarch. So Plutarch's works, his ideas, really did heavily influence the perhaps the greatest philosopher king of all time. Plutarch's emphasis on virtue and moral character resonated with Roman readers all across the empire. His works provided practical guidance on how to live a virtuous life, influencing both Roman education and culture. Plutarch writes, "The virtues of great men are examples to others." And this quote underscores the instructional purpose of his biographies. As well as that, it highlights Plutarch's belief in the educational value of studying the lives of people he believed to be virtuous individuals. By examining the actions and choices of great men, readers can learn important moral lessons that they could never get when somebody just says, "This is how you live a virtuous life," because it's all well and good being able to list off the qualities of virtue and being able to say you should live this way. It is a whole different kettle of fish when it comes to actually living that philosophy, embodying that philosophy. So it is through the examination of the actions and choices of the individual, of the people, of these great men, that we can learn the lessons from the person's true philosophy, the philosophy of the individual that lives below the surface, that isn't articulated in words and doesn't fall under a particular school of thought. that is the real philosophy of a man. So that's the bit that needs to be examined and learnt from. Plutarch's narrative style and his method of drawing moral comparisons between historical figures influenced Roman historiography. I always struggle to say that word, and biography. His approach provided a template for later Roman historians and biographers, people like Tacitus and so on, who themselves adopted similar techniques in their works. During the Renaissance, Plutarch's works were rediscovered, and they became a cornerstone of like a humanist education, and there was quite the revival. The Renaissance was. And we often think about the great works of art from the Renaissance period, but the real magic, the real beauty, the real revolution in that time wasn't a development of anything new. It was a rediscovery, capitulation of old ideas and reincorporating those ideas into what was at the time modern life. So the works of Plutarch were, as I say, rediscovered in this time, and there was a lot of excitement around it, and it was reshaping society on a minute by minute basis. It was a very exciting time, or so I've read. Obviously, I'm nowhere near old enough to have been alive during the Renaissance, despite how it may appear. So Erasmus, and I probably pronounced that name wrong, but Erasmus wrote, "When I get a little money, I buy books, and if any is left, I buy food and clothes." Now this is a quote that, beyond being beyond feeling like this person has just looked into my life personally and gone, "That's what you're doing," this quote reflects the humanist emphasis during the Renaissance on the value of knowledge and learning. And that sort of idea was inspired by figures like Plutarch. So that emphasis on the value of knowledge and learning was more than just an emphasis. It was a humanist dedication to learning and intellectual development. And these values were values that were directly and intensely influenced by the works of Plutarch. Plutarch's parallel lives had a profound impact on perhaps the most famous writer of all time, and that's William Shakespeare, who used them as primary sources for his Roman plays, such as Julius Caesar, Antony and Cleopatra. What was the other one? Oh, this is embarrassing. I can't remember what the other one is, but it's not that important. Anyway, Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra are probably the two that, like, literally everybody knows something about. So Plutarch's detailed characterizations and moral reflections really enriched Shakespeare's portrayal of these historical figures. In Julius Caesar, Shakespeare writes, "The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones." And this quote reflects the moral complexity that Shakespeare drew from Plutarch's biographies. In some sense, it illustrates the lasting impact of actions, a theme that resonates with Plutarch's exploration of the consequences of virtues and vices in his biographies. Enlightenment philosophers, people like Rousseau and Voltaire, were influenced by Plutarch's ethical writings and his emphasis. I'm struggling to speak today, and indeed every day. So let me start that sentence again. So the philosophers of the Enlightenment, people like Rousseau and Voltaire, they were heavily influenced by Plutarch's ethical writings and his emphasis on virtue. His works contributed to the Enlightenment's focus on moral philosophy and the development of character. Now, it wasn't just Plutarch that they took sort of inspiration from. That whole period of Roman Greco-Moralists were really quite really important to the Enlightenment philosophers. Voltaire once wrote, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." This reflects the Enlightenment emphasis on an individual's right to rights and ethical principles, which was in itself inspired by the Roman Greco-Moralists, especially Plutarch. And this quote from Voltaire highlights the commitment to ethical principles and individual rights of the Enlightenment movement, and they were influenced by Plutarch's emphasis on the sort of virtue and moral character. Plutarch's exploration of moral character, leadership, and the responsibilities of public service continues to be relevant in modern discussions on ethics and politics. His biographies offer timeless lessons on the qualities of good leadership and the impact of personal virtues and on public life. That's what I was trying to say. So there is a quote that you have now, once at this point, you've heard me state several times, but this quote has lots of sort of layered meaning to it. So I'm not repeating myself through lack of imagination. It's just that this happens to be the quote that I feel exemplifies the exploration of character and leadership and so on of Plutarch. "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." This quote underscores the belief that education should inspire and ignite curiosity and wisdom, rather than just imparting facts, cold-hardened facts, static knowledge, or whatever you want to call it. This sort of transformative view of education informed Plutarch's political and ethical teachings, but it has also informed the political and ethical teachings of many philosophers and sort of public intellectuals and so on that have come since. And it is something that is still relevant today. Another thing that sort of Plutarch is another effect that Plutarch has had on the modern world is his influence on biography and historical writing. His approach to biography, focusing on character and moral lessons, has shaped the genre of biographical writing. So modern biographers and historians draw quite a lot of inspiration from his method of exploring the ethical dimensions of their subjects' lives. The very spring and root of honesty and virtue lie in good education. So this quote emphasizes the importance of education in fostering honesty and virtue. Plutarch believed that cultivating good character and ethical behavior begins with a solid educational foundation, and actually can't begin in a meaningful way without it. Plutarch's insights into human behavior and character have also influenced modern psychology and philosophy. His discussions of virtue, self-control, and the development of moral character resonate with contemporary theories of personal development and ethical behavior. So we're going to have another look at a quote. We're going to have a quote that we've already seen, but it really does highlight this influence on psychology and philosophy in the modern world. Through contemplation, the soul rises to the divine. So this quote highlights the view that Plutarch held, that contemplation and moral purification can and indeed will elevate the soul to a direct experience of the divine. And these experiences are seen as being knowledge in its ultimate form, the highest form of knowledge. So Plutarch's philosophy and writings have had a profound and indeed lasting impact on both ancient Rome and also the modern world. His emphasis on virtue, moral character, and the educational value of biographies continues to influence a wide range of disciplines to this day, from literature and history to philosophy and psychology. So that was our whistle-stop tour of Plutarch. As I said at the beginning, there is so much more that could be said about Plutarch and his works, but I realise we are about an hour into it, maybe a bit longer, I don't really know, at least an hour into it, so I think this will be a good spot to wrap it up. So in conclusion, so to speak, Plutarch was a profound thinker, writer, and moralist whose works have had a lasting impact on Western literature and thought. His dedication to exploring the human condition and providing moral guidance has cemented his place as a significant figure in and amongst the Greco-Roman moralists, and in a much sort of grander scale within Western intellectual history. So thank you for joining me on this comprehensive but still somewhat introductory exploration of Plutarch's life, his philosophy, and his legacy. I hope you found this informative and thought-provoking and interesting and all those wonderful things. If you have got to this stage, I would really appreciate if you do all the YouTube-y things. So what are those things? That is subscribe, because that way you get all the new content when it comes up. Like the video, because it makes me feel good. Share the video with your social media followings. That would enable me to reach more people and brings me back to my second point of makes me feel good. And finally, and this is the most important thing for me at least, I would appreciate it if you would jump into the comments and let me know which part of that you found most interesting, and why you found that interesting. And the other thing, before I go and let you get back to your day, I just want to put it out there that if you have any questions, just jump in the comments. I will answer those questions as best I can. If those questions can't be answered in a text form, like a couple of sentences or whatever, like a comment, then I am more than happy to make a whole video about it. So jump in the comments with those questions. And as I say, thank you very much for watching, for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.